My name is Andrew Rosenbaum, and today I'm going to be talking about why student athletes should get paid. Some unknown information is that only roughly 1% of all college scholarships are full rides. Although many will argue that being able to play for a Division I program and university is a blessing itself, which is true, the university could at least provide the student athlete with some benefit from making the university revenue. With only roughly 2% of student athletes across the country on any kind of scholarship, the only benefit the university has given student athletes is allowing them to wear the uniform. Most scholarships, other than roughly 1% of them, are not full rides, meaning the other 99% of college athletes do not have all their university costs covered. I emphasize university costs because full rides do not cover expenses like gas, food, medical insurance, and other expenses student athletes have while playing their sport. A little bit on more unknown information is that even though these university scholarships do not cover all the costs, athletes pretty much have no time to be able to make any money to cover these costs. And this challenge is especially hard on student athletes because they're not able to work while at the university due to the amount of time they spend either playing their sport or doing schoolwork. This adds another reason as to why they should get money for playing their sport. These student athletes have to either rely on their parents or their university to pay for other expenses, which is why some tend to take extra illegal benefits from boosters, which puts their eligibility in jeopardy. While at their respective university, student athletes are treated as professionals in everything they do, from film to weight room work, nutrition, and of course practices and games. By having this professional-like environment all the time and sacrificing their bodies every day for their sport, paying student athletes just makes sense. These young adults are being worked and trained as professionals, so why should they not be treated like it off the field? These student athletes do not have the benefits of other regular students do of free time, where they can make money working at a job while working towards a degree. The student athlete's job is being a student athlete. When they are not on the field or doing work to recover from the work they did, they are usually doing schoolwork or watching film to improve their game. By having to do this every day, it takes a toll on their bodies and results in injuries and sometimes mental health problems. These athletes go through so much, and if they are struggling and lose some of their ability, the coaches essentially disregard them and look for their replacement. On top of all this, even if a student athlete does make it to the professional level, in a sport like football, the average time spent in the NFL is just 3 years. So the window of opportunity for these students to be successful is extremely short, so it makes sense to allow them to maximize their opportunities while they can. Besides all of the on-field, track, court, or pool work, these student athletes do not have much, if any, time to themselves. When they are not working out, watching film, or doing other things to improve their work, they are usually recovering. By having to do so much work for their bodies to be ready to go again the next day, then having a good-sized workload in school, these student athletes have a hard time finding time to socialize and relax. Many of these student athletes are running from morning workouts to school, back to film, then to study hall, and then back in for afternoon practices and lifts. By having to do all of these, the student athletes do not have time to sit down and relax because it seems like the second that they do, they have to get back up and go do the next thing in their day. Although this seems like something no one would want to do, it is what student athletes have to embrace if they want to achieve their dreams of becoming a professional in their sport. By forcing student athletes to do all of this and expect them to go out and make money for the school with the product they put on the field and not paying them seems rather unreasonable. Athletes such as Stanley Dottie at the University of South Carolina got a neck injury during training camp the last year at the school. He was considered one of, if not the top defensive lineman in the upcoming 2006 draft and was told to play through the pain. By doing this, he ended up with severe problems and was forced to retire from the game of football, missing out on an entire NFL career before it even began. After being forced to retire, he is now suing South Carolina and the NCAA for, quote, the mistreatment he received following his injury. This, along with many other examples, shows how much these student athletes put on the line without any protection whatsoever. Yes, of course, there will be issues discussing who gets paid and how much, but there are plenty of researchers that have come up with formulas and calculations to make payments reasonable. By the NCAA not allowing student athletes to get paid while they bring in roughly $13 billion alone from college sports, the obvious answer is that student athletes need to get paid at least some of the extreme amount of revenue they generate for their universities. Obviously, the payment for each student athlete is going to be different. However, it will not be different between men's and women's sports due to a Title IX ruling stating that the amount of scholarships that the men's programs have has to equal the women's program. By having this ruling, both men's and women's student athletes will be paid the exact same if there is ever a ruling that allows them to make money off their name, image, and likeness. By not paying student athletes when they generate roughly $13 billion in revenue a year, the NCAA is robbing these college athletes of their rights and abusing their skills. These student athletes fund large parts of universities and colleges around the country. If it were not for these student athletes, many schools would have significantly less money from boosters, sponsors, and in general, how much the student athletes generate for their universities. The pay demand is not so great that every player is demanding they be paid like a top professional athlete. They just want protection in case of an injury that could potentially ruin their career. By not taking care of or protecting the players, the NCAA is not doing what it stands for, which is protecting players while giving opportunities to young aspiring athletes to compete at the highest level. Without these student athletes, the NCAA would not even be close to how successful it is today. So it only seems right that they pay the workers that are supplying the product. Thank you, and here are my sources.